Each week on Culinary Confidential, Christina Cates, a seasoned foodie who has worked at some of New York City's top restaurants, will share her passion for the culinary world. Whether you're a professional chef, a restaurant enthusiast, or a lover of good food, Christina dives into the heart of hospitality, exploring the trends, triumphs, and challenges facing the food service profession. And you won't want to miss her chats with some of the most interesting and influential industry voices. And now, please take your seat at the table as Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates starts now, exclusively on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome to Culinary Confidential. I'm Christina Cates, and tonight's show sits right at the intersection of food, health, and real life. This show is produced in association with my dear friend, Lucas A. Ferrara. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most talked about shifts in American nutrition policy in recent memory, the revamp of the federal dietary guidelines and an updated food pyramid led by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Just this month, the U.S. government issued updated dietary guidance, the first major reset in decades, with a clear message to eat real food. Under Kennedy's leadership, the classic food pyramid, long replaced by the My Plate graphic, has been brought back with an inverted design. In this new pyramid, high-quality proteins and healthy fats are placed at the top, signaling priority in the daily diet, and whole, minimally processed foods are emphasized across the board. Grains, particularly refined carbohydrates, have been de-emphasized compared to previous models. Added sugars and ultra-processed foods are strongly discouraged, and guidance around fats has shifted to include whole food fat sources like avocados, nuts, and full-fat dairy. These changes reflect the Make America Healthy Again initiative and aim to address rising chronic disease through dietary changes. The rationale from the Department of Health and Human Services frames this overhaul as a historic reset of federal nutrition policy, seeking to return to simpler, nutrient-dense foods and away from packaged, highly processed fare, all rooted in the goal of improving long-term health outcomes and reducing diet-related disease. If you felt confused lately about what we're supposed to eat, you're not alone. For decades, Americans have been handed a version of the food pyramid or the plate that promised clarity. Eat this much of this, eat this much of that, avoid this, prioritize that. But behind those simple visuals are massive systems. Agriculture, food manufacturing, healthcare, policy, and science, all evolving, sometimes slowly, sometimes controversially. And right now we're in the middle of another shift. There's been a lot of conversation around the new food pyramid and dietary guideline changes tied to the RFK Jr. era, raising questions about ultra-processed foods, seed oils, sugar, additives, protein sources, and how much influence industry has had on what's on our plates. Some people hear change and feel hopeful. Others hear it and feel skeptical or overwhelmed. So tonight isn't about panic. It's not about trends. And it's definitely not about diet culture. It's about understanding. Because what we eat every day affects our energy, our kids' focus in school, chronic disease, inflammation, mental clarity, and frankly, how we feel just moving through the world. That's why I'm really excited about tonight's guest. To help us make sense of this new nutritional landscape, what it means for your daily plate and how it aligns or clashes with decades of dietary science and how you can apply it practically, I'm pleased to welcome back to Culinary Confidential, Dr. Ian K. Smith to the show. Dr. Smith is an American physician, nationally recognized health expert, and #1 New York Times bestselling author with decades of experience in nutrition, weight management, and public health education. He holds a medical degree from the University of Chicago, Pritzker School of Medicine, after studies at Harvard College and Dartmouth Medical School, and has served 2 terms on the President's Council of Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition. Over the years, he's authored dozens of health books, including Shred, The Revolutionary Diet, and Blast the Sugar Out, and has been a familiar voice to many through his work as a medical correspondent and host on television and radio. Most recently, Dr. Smith has released his latest book, The Last 15, Say Goodbye to Those Most Stubborn Pounds, a science-based 7-week program designed to help readers understand metabolism, overcome weight loss plateaus, and adapt sustainable nutrition and lifestyle habits. The book includes meal plans, strategies rooted in metabolic science, and practical approaches to reshaping your relationship with food, a timely topic as many Americans reevaluate their diets in light of the new federal guidelines. So tonight, we'll unpack what's changed in the nutrition guidance, what the science does and doesn't say, and how you can make confident choices around food in 2026. When we talk about changes to dietary guidelines or the food pyramid, the big questions become what's actually new and what's just being reframed? Are these changes grounded in science or ideology? And how should everyday people, busy parents, working professionals, and families on budgets interpret all of this? We've also heard a lot of strong opinions surrounding RFK Jr.'s views on the food systems, additives, the chronic disease. Whether you agree or disagree, the conversation itself has cracked something open, a renewed focus on food quality, processing, and transparency. And that's worth talking about. Tonight, Dr. Smith and I are going to break this down. What dietary guideline changes really mean for your daily meals? How to separate evidence-based nutrition from noise? What matters most when you're standing in the grocery store aisle? And how to think about food not as good or bad, but as fuel, culture, and long-term health. This show is about empowerment, not perfection. You don't need to overhaul your entire life after tonight's show. But if you walk away understanding your food choices a little bit better and feeling more confident making them, then we've done our job. So stay with us. Right now, I'm joined by Dr. Ian K. Smith, and we'll dig into what these food pyramid and dietary guideline changes really mean for you and your family. Dr. Ian, welcome back to the show. I have to tell you, I love saying that. There aren't many people that I've had on the show twice, but when I decided I wanted to cover this topic, I said, I have to see if Dr. Ian is available to jump back on, and here you are, so this is exciting.
I'm glad to be back, always. Thanks for having me.
Great. All right. So we're hearing a lot about the changes to the food pyramid and the dietary guidelines. At a high level, what's actually shifting and why now?
You know, it's interesting. Why now? Why now is because it seems like science and credible science is just under attack. Science is a very slow, corroborative process, meaning that one researcher just can't stand up and say, hey, I've discovered something, and then everyone says, great, we'll go with it. In fact, science is all about cooperation. So you have researchers from around the world, not just the US, but when there are scientific things that are being discussed or changed, researchers from around the world look at all the available evidence, they discuss it, and even then, they don't always come up with a unanimous opinion, but there is pretty much kind of a majority of people or researchers or scientific bodies who kind of come to some consensus. And so that's typically how science works, especially when you're talking about science that informs public health decisions. You want to make sure you have the best available researchers, the best available evidence that's been thoroughly vetted in a scientific way. There's a real way to vet these studies. And so what's happening now is really confusing. There are people who are making decisions at the governmental level who either don't understand science, don't care about science, or who maybe have a political agenda to politicize what should never be politicized. Medicine and health and science should be apolitical issues. And so we find ourselves in a very dangerous vortex where decades and decades of research and recommendations to Americans and to others around the world are under assault for ascientific reasons.
So your personal opinion, are you not for the dietary changes? Do you like the old way that we were observing it?
I think that some of the dietary changes that are recommended are actually good. I think, emphasizing avoiding added sugars
yes.
Is important. Getting rid of excess sugars, refined carbohydrates, that is wonderful. Actually emphasizing protein, I think, is really good. Making protein a priority. I tend to believe that not enough Americans are getting enough protein. Where I differ in the protein recommendation is the source of protein.
Right.
They have now made red meat kind of a priority protein source, and I don't agree with that. I think that red meat can be part of one's diet, but I don't think it should be a frequent component of one's diet. They also talk about, and by the way, by adding more red meat, you're now adding saturated fats.
Yep.
We have known for decades that saturated fats tend to be heart unhealthy and can have, unfortunate health consequences. And they're now suggesting just the opposite. So my point about that is, well, where's the research that shows that saturated fats are actually healthy for you? There's decades and thousands of research showing that it's not healthy for you. Why now are we saying that it's healthy? There's no research showing that. So I don't disagree with all the guidelines, but I do disagree with some of the guidelines.
Sure. Okay, so how do these new guidelines address chronic disease, things like obesity, diabetes, the heart health that you were just mentioning, compared to the earlier models? Because if we're incorporating more red meat into the mainstream diet, that's not good for heart disease. It's clogging your arteries. It's confusing for people.
That's correct. And that's why, these results are somewhat contradictory, but there are good things. They're heralding whole grains and avoiding refined carbohydrates. And whole grains are very important. They have fiber in it and a lot of other nutrients. So that's very good. They are avoiding added sugars. That's very good. They actually talk about avoiding highly processed foods. That's very good for obesity, being overweight, and our heart. So it's really a mixed bag here. I'm not saying that all these guidelines are bad. I'm saying it's a mixed bag, and I think that people have to pick out of the bag what are the things that are backed by real science.
Well, I think it's confusing for some people, and let me tell you why. Because right now, I think maybe my generation of people a little bit younger, they have access to other platforms like social media. They can do their own research things. People like my parents, right? They're not going down the web of researching so much the good and the bad. They're going to take something like this, like the food pyramid, and say, oh, they say I could eat steak. I want to eat steak 4 days a week. And the interpretation is where things get lost a little bit. I did a show last week about carbohydrates, picking a better carbohydrate for a new year, new pantry. So we're not saying don't eat carbs. We're saying pick a better carb, right? Breadfruit flour, something I never even heard of. There's this brand Amisar. They're making breadfruit flour. It has a ton of fiber in it. So you're able to get fiber through a carbohydrate where if you're just buying that local grocery store white bread off the shelf, that's a wasted food. That's doing nothing for your nutritional value.
So there's a lot you said there. Let's first start talking about the dangers for those people who are not social media or health literate, people who tend not to be able to navigate the internet very well, people who are going to rely on, as the primary source, the government, for what the health recommendations are. You are absolutely correct, and this is why I say that it's dangerous. It's dangerous because there are plenty of people, myself and many others, and yourself included, who won't just take things at face value. They'll look at the research, look at the different evidence, different sources. It's just like when you buy a car. You don't go to one place to buy a car. You go to at least 3 places, get different quotes. You got to be able to shop around a little bit. Well, the same thing with medical and health information. Number one, you have to shop around. Number two, you have to know where to go to shop. And unfortunately, older people don't know necessarily where to go and how to vet that information. And that's why I'm recommending to people, if you want to go and really confirm health information, you need to look at the health organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Association. Go to the professional organizations who are staffed and run by professional scientists who have been doing this for decades. And so if more Americans will go, the Nutrition Society, if more Americans will go and read even just the websites, just go on these websites. They have tons of information, free information, easy to navigate, easy to access. That is where I think most Americans should be getting their information.
I agree with that. Let's continue to talk about some of these other hot button items, right? We talked about carbs.
Hold on. And then the second point I wanted to make was the carbohydrates.
Okay, go ahead.
So people vilify carbohydrates. And what people don't understand is, number one, carbohydrates are the number one fuel source for your body. The body needs carbohydrates. It is considered to be one of the 3 macronutrients. The reason why they're called macronutrients is because they are needed in macro supply, in large supply. So for people to vilify carbohydrates and say you shouldn't have carbs, carbs are bad for you, that is very disingenuous and very misleading. What should be said is that there are bad carbs and there are good carbs. Obviously, bad carbs are bad for you, but good carbs are really good for you, and we should emphasize the good carbs and eliminate or de-emphasize the bad carbs.
What are some of the good carbs?
Well, good carbs are fruits, and fiber, by the way, is a carb. Vegetables, these are all things that have good carbs in them. And the reason why they're good carbs also, by the way, is because they are surrounded by good other nutrients. These are good carbs for you. And bad carbs are cookies and pastries and things like that, cakes. Those are not good carbs for you.
Definitely not. Did you hear that, Dad? These are bad carbs. Cookies and cakes. I know he's listening. Okay. So regarding the dietary fats, we talked about the saturated fats, but where are the seed oils and even omega-3s coming into the conversation?
Well, omega-3s are, once again, backed by a lot of science that says that omega-3s are important. They're heart healthy and they are brain healthy. And it's very important that people understand why we need omega-3s. When you look at, for example, the blue zones around the world, those are the areas around the world where people tend to be the healthiest and live the longest. And a staple in the Mediterranean diet, which is consumed by a lot of blue zones, are omega-3 fatty acids, foods that contain a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, whether it's in oils like extra virgin olive oil, or whether it's in fish like salmon or mackerel, sardines, fatty fish that have omega-3s. So omega-3s are extremely important for that. Also, oils that contain good fat. There are oils that contain good fats, particularly olive oil is one of the best, obviously. People should be consuming these types of oils rather than consuming butter. Definitely not consuming margarine, by the way. But, doing things like roasting your vegetables. Roasting vegetables with, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of oil is a great way to take in these healthy fats.
You know what? Back to those blue zones. They do prioritize protein there across the board, but it's more plant-based. I watched this whole documentary about the beans, legumes, things like that. So here we are in America, we're like, eat half a cow, you're going to live longer, but it's really not the case. Protein, like you were saying, is good, but the kind of protein is important. And when you're living in those blue zones, you're living over 100 years, there's something to be said about only having those kinds of meats for celebratory occasions, maybe once a week, twice a month, something like that. You have to get the right kind of protein. And again, an olive oil heavy diet.
That's right. And that is the point. The point is, when you look at the evidence is a preponderance of evidence, and it is in front of us. And to sit there and just ignore the evidence because either you don't understand the evidence, or you refuse to understand the evidence, or you have another agenda, whatever option it is as to why you're ignoring the preponderance of evidence is ridiculous and it's dangerous. And I think that I think America is smarter than what most people give us credit for. I think most Americans are realizing that something is going on. When you change decades of research and recommendations without also offering a scientific foundation of why you're changing it, people are scratching their heads saying, huh? I mean, the same thing with vaccines. The idea that you want to cancel all these different vaccines or no longer make them a requirement. And for decades and decades, they've been a requirement. And oh, by the way, we're having probably the worst flu season in history.
Amen.
I mean, listen, you got to use, my grandfather would say, sometimes you got to use common horse sense. And I think that more Americans are going to do that.
I love that. Okay, let's go to commercial break. Stay tuned. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970 The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the changing food pyramid and new dietary guidelines shaping how Americans eat. I'm joined again by Dr. Ian K. Smith, physician, author, and public health expert, breaking down what these updates really mean, why they're happening now, and how they impact everything from our grocery carts to long-term health. Dr. Ian, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Christina, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, I do want to get into your book, but I want to finish our conversation about these new guidelines because, we've talked so much about it. I want to know, do you think is there a risk that nutrition policy becomes aspirational but actually unrealistic for the average household? Because when I think about eating quality food, right, fruits, vegetables, sustainably sourced proteins, that's expensive, right? Because our model in America is a little skewed, right? Like organic foods, they're more expensive. It's easier to buy things that are prepared in mass quantities.
Well, first of all, recommendations are recommendations. They aren't like permanent, concrete, you must do. They're recommendations. And people should look at recommendations as, okay, well, I should try this. And I have a general rule, which is if you make good decisions 70% of the time, you're going to be fine. And so do you need to follow every single recommendation? Absolutely not. But do you try to incorporate recommendations so that 70% of the time you're kind of close to them? Yes. And everyone's different. Everyone lives differently. Everyone has different income levels, different taste preferences, medical issues. You have to make them work for you in consultation with your healthcare provider if you have some kind of medical issue going on. And so I think that the way people approach recommendations should be, okay, this may make sense. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to do my best. But I think people should also give themselves grace. We talked about carbohydrates. Do I eat cookies? Absolutely. Do I eat cake? Absolutely. Now, I don't eat it every day. I don't eat red meat very often. Will I have some red meat? Yeah, I have some meatloaf during the winter every once in a while. But that's the key. The key is make it work for you so it's something that you can do and you don't feel like you're completely restricted from it. The other part of it is I think that people have to understand everything doesn't need to be organic. Yes, organic is more expensive because of the way it's farmed. And by the way, prices in general are expensive. But everything doesn't need to be organic. And I think that people need to decide what they're going to purchase that's organic and what is not. What's more important is something that is free of hormones, free of antibiotics, that is free of pesticides as much as possible, or low pesticide environment. And I think that's important. But people have to make a decision about how they're going to, fill their grocery cart. And I think it's doable. I think it's challenging. But if there's any place to invest, most importantly, it's in your health.
Absolutely. Health is wealth. That's the best saying I've ever heard. You know what? When you were on the show earlier last year, we were talking about the Kerrygold butter being our favorite. That stick of Kerrygold butter goes a long way in your house, let me tell you.
That's my favorite butter, by the way. I love that butter.
It's the best. It's a grass-fed butter.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And you don't cook with butter often, but when you do, you choose the Kerrygold. It was just in the news like last week that there's these forever chemicals in the foil wrapping of this butter. It's like we can't catch a break.
Yes. And I'm not defending them, by the way. My wife tends to like it, which is why we started eating it. But just so you know, every stick is not in a foil wrap. They also have paper wrap.
That's right.
Too. So it's right. So, the single sticks are in the paper wrap. The block of the butter is in the foil wrap. So there's a way around that very easily.
I know, but I feel fancier with the foil wrap. Oh, well. Anyway, looking ahead, do you expect nutrition policy to continue evolving quickly, or do you think we're settling into a more stable framework?
I think it's going to be evolving. I mean, when you talk about policy at the governmental level, I think it's going to be evolving. I think it's unpredictable. When you talk about policy from credible, decades-old organizations that have been doing this forever, I think it's pretty darn stable because policies don't change dramatically because the sciences that support it don't change dramatically. Yeah, you may see an incremental change, a new discovery, a new this, a new opinion, but you don't, in real scientifically controlled bodies, you don't see radical changes very often.
All right, I think we're going to shelf that conversation for now because we got to move into your book, right? You have this new fresh book out called The Last 15, Say Goodbye to Those Stubborn Pounds. Well done, Dr. Smith. I mean, you're always on the forefront of what people want. The last 15 is always the toughest, right? People always complain, I've plateaued, I lost 100 pounds, I can't get the last 10 off. What made you write this book?
Well, so many people have made that complaint. They're saying either they can't get the last 10 to 15 pounds off or that they've been doing well, they've been losing weight, and now they're stuck. Let me explain to people that there's real science behind it. A couple of reasons why you plateau typically. Number one is that when you've been losing weight for a while, you become smaller. And as you become smaller, the amount of calories you need to consume must also be reduced. Instead, people still consume the same amount of calories when they were heavier when they're smaller. And therefore, you no longer have that calorie deficit. That is the difference between the calories in and the calories out, that mathematical difference. When you don't have the calorie deficit anymore because now you're smaller, but you're still consuming too many calories, then the weight loss stops. The other thing that happens, by the way, is that people understand the body does not want to lose weight. The body's natural state is it wants to hold on to weight. It does not want to expend energy. Expending energy is very expensive. So what happens is when you've been losing weight for a while, your body says, man, I got to figure out how to stop losing weight. And so the body starts to fight back. So when you hit a plateau, it's actually not a bad thing. It's your body saying to you, you have been winning. You've been beating me. Now I have figured out your offense and I have a defense. Now what you have to do is not something that's right because you've been doing something right. You have to do a different right. So those are a couple reasons why we actually end up plateau. But you can break through the plateau. And in the last 15, it's a 7-week plan. That's not a diet. It's not about throwing everything out of your kitchen. It's really a customized meal plan that combines food you probably already have in your house. It combines them in a way so that you can start resetting your metabolism, stabilizing your blood sugars, and then start priming your body for fat loss, which is what the ultimate goal is. And that's why the last 15 has been effective for a lot of people.
So out of all your books, right, what is the order in which you think you should start this program? Because obviously we're going to save the last 15 for those last 15 pounds. What other book of yours should someone start with who has a significant weight loss journey ahead of them?
Well, that's an interesting question because I have a Facebook group, over 14,000 people who are following the plan together. And so if people want to get the book and join the group, we can do it with us. It's called the Last 15 Group. But what I've learned in the group, because everyone's so active, is people need to lose more. A lot of people need to lose more than 15 pounds. They're using it to start their weight loss journey. I wrote it for the last 15, but people are also doing the first 15. I mean, some people are losing 7 pounds in just week 1. And I have to reiterate, this is not a diet. There's a lot of food on this plan, regular, affordable, accessible food. So it's not like you're not going to be eating, but people are losing weight even if they have more than 15 pounds to lose. But if someone wanted to do the last 15 and another one of my books, I would say probably either the MetFlex diet, which is a classic diet. So those books, if you wanted to lose more, could help you. But the last 15, I think, works also.
Amazing. Okay, in this book, The Last 15, you talk a lot about metabolic flexibility. Can you explain what that means in simple terms and why it matters so much as we age?
Absolutely. So metabolic flexibility means your body's ability to alternate between the types of fuels that it burns for energy. So carbs are a number one fuel source I mentioned earlier. So carbs are an important fuel source, but so is fat. We can burn fat. Now, fat is more difficult to burn. It's more expensive to burn fat for the body. It's harder for the body to do that, but they're two different fuel sources. And so metabolic flexibility means that if your body is in an environment where there are a lot of carbs or sugars on board, your body can burn through those carbs and the sugar. However, if your body is in an environment where there are not a lot of carbs on board, but there's fat present, then your body will actually burn the fat for energy. So being able to switch from burning fat to carbs, back to fat, and back and forth, that is called metabolic flexibility. And that is the ideal state we want to be in, because sometimes we don't have carbs on board. And in particular, we're trying to lose weight. We want to burn those fat stores.
So what happens if you've kind of yo-yo dieted a lot in your life and your metabolism is just all over the place? How do you begin to restore that?
Well, that's a great question. Yo-yo dieting has been shown to really disrupt our metabolism. And so the idea is you want to be stable. And it's not all about, but a big part of it is stabilizing your blood sugar absorption. You eat food, your body breaks it down into sugars, your body absorbs the sugars for energy. You want to be able to, and as a response to the sugar, your body releases the hormone insulin. And so you want your sugars, your blood sugar levels, and your insulin hormone levels to be as stable as possible. And people who don't have stability in those two areas tend to have spikes and crashes. They tend to have a very erratic metabolism. And so if you can eat consistently, and part of what I'm doing in the last 15 is I'm trying to show people that you can actually eat regular foods, not special foods, but regular foods in the right portions, in the right combinations, combining your macros. You can do that in a way that you can actually stabilize your metabolism and add a little bit of exercise, and you can actually boost your metabolism. And so I think that a plan that allows people to eat in a consistent manner and to eat well most of the time, you don't have to be perfect, not all the time, can help people avoid those erratic jumps in their metabolism.
I love it. All right, Dr. Ian, let's head to our last commercial break. When we get back, I have a few more questions for you, and then I want to do a little bit of a rapid fire rounds with you, if you don't mind. So stay tuned. You're listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Welcome back to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome back to the show. Tonight's conversation is all about the evolving dietary guidelines and how to make smarter, more realistic food choices in everyday life. Dr. Ian K. Smith is back with me, helping us cut through the noise, what to eat more of, what to rethink, and how small changes in the pantry can lead to big health benefits. He also has an amazing new book out right now called The Last 15, which can help you with those last few stubborn pounds. Dr. Ian, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit like real life stuff here. What's one habit people think is helping them lose weight, but it's actually sabotaging their progress?
dramatically reducing how many meals they eat in the course of the day. People who say, I'm just going to eat 1 meal a day or 1.5 meals a day is not very good for you. It'll work for a short period of time. And then after a while, the body starts getting very worried that it's not getting enough calories and not getting enough energy. And so what the body does is it flips its switch into starvation mode. And so instead of expending energy, which is what you want to do to lose weight, your body starts holding on to the energy. Well, guess where that energy is? That energy is in your fat. So instead of burning fat, your body holds on to fat because it doesn't think that it's getting enough food. So eating 1 meal or dramatically reducing your calories too long, too quickly can be counterproductive.
So what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
I love intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is different, though. Intermittent fasting, you're still eating, and you're still eating, a proper amount of calories. You're just eating those calories in a confined window, a feeding or eating window. And then during the fasting window, you're not having those calories because the idea is during your fasting period, you want to send your body, as I said when we talked about metabolic flexibility, you want to send your body into your fat stores to burn the fat for energy now that you don't have any food calories on board.
Got it. All right. What about stress? How much does stress, especially chronic stress, play in holding on to those last pounds?
It plays a huge role, particularly the stress hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone that causes us to maintain fat, to build fat, makes it difficult to burn fat. So the cortisol hormone, which is triggered by stress, it could be stress meaning that you are upset about something, you're in a chronic state of being overwhelmed at work, bad relationship, whatever. The body feels your stress. And when that happens, you release cortisol in a fight or flight kind of situation, and that can be very deleterious to the weight loss and to your health overall, and can create lots of body inflammation, which can be very bad for you.
Do you see differences in how men and women experience getting rid of the last 15?
Absolutely. Men tend to lose weight faster than women, and it's not because men are better. Men tend to lose weight faster than women because men tend to have more lean muscle mass, and muscles are more metabolically active. They eat calories all day long. They're very hungry. And so men have muscle. And so a man sitting at a desk with muscle, he's still burning through calories, whereas a woman who has very small muscle mass is not burning the same amount of calories, which is why in the last 15, I'm asking people to lift weights. You need to increase your muscle mass, more protein, which feeds your muscles, more weightlifting or strength training or resistance bands, which will increase the size of your muscle. And when you increase the size of your muscle mass, your body muscle mass, you have a higher metabolism and you burn more calories.
Wow, that's amazing information. All right, well, what kind of movement do you personally recommend for people who are exhausted and just overwhelmed? People have busy lives these days. How are they going to fit the exercise in if they don't have 3 hours to spend at the gym? What's some great compact advice on what you can do every day to just move the needle a little bit?
I have videos I do. I just posted on Instagram. Once again, my Instagram is at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, I-A-N Smith. I just posted a 7-minute cardio workout that requires no machine whatsoever. It requires open floor. That's it. And so there are plenty of exercises that people can do in 7 minutes or 10 minutes. And for someone to say that they don't have 7 or 10 minutes to make a difference, I just don't buy that. So that becomes the point. You just don't want to do it. So if someone says I'm very busy or I'm very tired, I don't have a lot of time, 7 or 10 minutes, I can get you a decent workout in.
I love that. Okay. How does focusing on the last 15 pounds connect to aging well and preventing that chronic disease that we hear so much about?
Because when people focus on getting rid of those last 15 pounds, they aren't dieting anymore, which is what they're doing now is they're making lifestyle changes. The whole purpose of the book is to get people to be able to make better choices on their own without even thinking about it. I want you to make choices at a restaurant, at an airport, at a hotel, or at home, in a grocery store. I want you to make choices that are reflexive. You don't think about it. Of course, you're going to load most of your cart up by shopping around the perimeter of the store where the more healthy foods are. You're going to eat less processed foods. You're going to stop drinking or drink much less soda and all these sugary beverages. So the idea is that as we're getting older and we're trying to lose these last 15 pounds, What we're going to do to lose the last 15 pounds is make good lifestyle choices that will benefit us for the rest of our lives.
Okay, that's great. I want to move into the rapid fire round with you if you don't mind.
Sure, let's go.
You ready for this? Okay. One food people unnecessarily fear.
Quinoa.
Quinoa. I love quinoa. But there's a lot of protein and fiber in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But people fear it because they don't understand it.
Yep.
They think that it's something strange. They think that it tastes bad, and they don't understand it's a very versatile grain.
Love that. Okay. One habit that sabotages the last 15.
Not eating enough.
Okay. Most underrated health metric.
Fat ratio, fat percentage.
Better for long-term health, consistency or intensity?
Consistency all day long.
Biggest nutrition myth still hanging on.
That's a good one. A nutrition myth that's still hanging on.
Maybe like keto.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say that cleanses.
Ooh, yeah.
A lot of these liquid cleanses that do not provide enough nutrition while you're doing them.
Love that. Okay. One thing people should stop doing in the name of dieting.
Eating low-calorie foods that have lots of sugar in them.
Mm-hmm. Best daily habit that costs nothing.
Moving.
Most overlooked factor in weight loss after 40.
Muscles.
One sign your body needs a reset, not a restriction.
Low energy.
Ooh, that one hits home. Okay, health goal everyone should focus on in 2026.
I know I keep going back to this, but I have to say this. Everyone should focus on building more muscle mass.
Very important.
Everybody.
Very important. Okay, that's Dr. Ian K. Smith. The book is The Last 15, practical, science-backed, and refreshingly realistic. Thank you, Dr. Ian, for helping us cut through the noise tonight.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you.
I will have you on again because whether you like it or not, you're the resident doctor on Culinary Confidential.
Anytime, just let me know, okay?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Take care.
That brings us to our ingredient of the week. Our ingredient of the week is nuts. Long discouraged due to the fat content, nuts are now recognized as metabolically supportive, helping with satiety, blood sugar regulation, and heart health when eaten, of course, in moderation. Peanuts, almonds, walnuts, and pistachios reflect the shift away from low-fat dogma and toward nutrient density, a theme echoed in Dr. Ian K. Smith's work on sustainable weight loss and metabolic health. Nuts are one of those ingredients that instantly elevate a dish while delivering real nutritional value, proof that healthy eating doesn't have to feel restrictive. Here are some ideas on how to incorporate nut-friendly recipes into your repertoire. How about warming the nuts, right, in the oven with rosemary and sea salt for an elevated quick snack, or a yogurt bowl with toasted nuts and honey? I also like a nut-crusted salmon or even chicken. The options are limitless as long as you're not allergic to them. Thank you for listening to Culinary Confidential with Christina Cates, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. on AM 970 The Answer. Tune in next week for when I start a series that will run for the month of February called A Spotlight on Hospitality Industry Entrepreneurs. Kicking off the series is the vibrant and convivial Max Tucci of the famed restaurant legacy family that owned Delmonico's. He is just so awesome and brings the best energy to the room. I can't wait for this episode. But that is the show for tonight. Thanks for listening and have a great night.
The preceding program is sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.